we're savoring these last weeks that we enjoy Anne as our pianist among us, and today we get to hear a new composition, that gospel processional and recessional that you heard today. So, beautiful, thank you. So, St. Stephen isn't an easy guy. He's kind of rough, I think, and not always easy to get along with. He makes me uncomfortable anyway, and as I thought about what made me uncomfortable about Stephen, I began to imagine myself in this persona of someone who might have known him, and this amounts to the laundry list of reasons why you wouldn't want to invite Stephen to your dinner party. For one thing, unlike our puppet, the guy can't stop talking. The apostles told him to feed people, and here he is out preaching in the streets. And he never stops talking about religion and politics. Religion and politics. And, of course, he's always right. You know, I think he's one of those angry Greeks, you know, perceiving slights to his people, imagining injustice everywhere. You know, the story of Stephen, his original job was to provide for the distribution, the fair distribution of food, which supposedly was not being fairly distributed to the Greek widows and orphans. Well, of course, they got a Greek to take care of that, didn't they? And with Stephen, everything is life or death. He doesn't know when to quit, when to walk away and fight another day. He takes everything all the way to the mat. He doesn't play well with others. Needless to say, who likes him? I mean, I'm sure the apostles find him useful, and I'm sure his Greek widows and orphans like him all right, but who else? He's so superior to everyone. Civic and religious leaders, he pretends that he has all the wisdom, to the degree that he publicly forgives people for things they do not regret. When I want your forgiveness, I'll let you know. Makes you want to grind your teeth and throw rocks. All right. So after I did that little tirade, I asked myself more a little, to be honest, and to identify what it was that I found so uncomfortable with him. You know, I used to lead with my idealism. I remember many times in my college days and shortly thereafter when I got myself in really big trouble, spouting off with my opinions about religion and politics. And I'm afraid that's kind of my default position, that, you know, that sense that I know best, and let me tell you how the cow ate the cabbage. That's probably why I wound up being a priest. But after 20 years, some of that gets beat out of you. You know, after 20 years of annoying people, you learn at least to tone it down a little bit. You learn to be mistrustful of that instinct. And I think I have. You can give me feedback later and tell me if I have. But my sense of things is that I work pretty hard to avoid confrontation. And I tend to choose the path of slow persuasion or quiet tolerance. And guys like Stephen make me real nervous. Real nervous. I always want to ask myself where all that fire comes from. Is it an ego need to be out in front and in trouble all the time? Is it obnoxious convert syndrome? These days I try to be more conciliatory and try to keep folks happy. But then I have to wonder, is happy what we really need to be? Stephen haunts me. Not too long ago, a week ago on Martin Luther King Day, a friend of mine posted on Facebook, a fellow priest. It's public, so I think it's fine to tell you. And he posted a comment that was kind of snarky about service. You know, a lot of people want to use Martin Luther King Day as a day of service. And what he said was, well, very nice, but Martin Luther King is not about service. Martin Luther King is about justice. And we're watering down his legacy and cheapening it by making it just a day to do nice things for other people. And I was really annoyed with him. It's like, oh, come on. You know, can't you just let people do something nice for somebody else without being snarky? And then I had to take a step back and say, but maybe there's some truth to that too. We need to wrestle with Stephen's legacy, as we do with the real legacy of Martin Luther King. We just watched the PBS series on the abolitionists and watched those stories unfold. There were some real arrogant, obnoxious people in that bunch. It was their job, it was their vocation to be arrogant and obnoxious and to wake people up to something that really needed to happen. We need to wrestle with Stephen's legacy, understanding that the spiritual and the political cannot be easily divided and should not be divided. Our values are going to cry for justice. That's what's central to the Christian message. The dignity of every human being is embedded in our baptismal vows. So that requires action, and sometimes corporate action in the real world looks specific and looks political. Shall we avoid talking about anything that matters because it's not nice or it makes us uncomfortable? Can we put aside talking about global warming or safety of children in schools or immigration? What would Stephen do? What would Stephen do? Our bishops likes to say that the deacon's job, Stephen being among the first deacons, the deacon's job is to find trouble and bring it back to the church. I'm not Stephen. It's my job as priest, I think anyway, to be concerned with the spiritual care of the whole congregation. And it is appropriate for me to worry a little bit about things flowing with harmony and good feeling. I mean, maybe I'm just rationalizing. Maybe it's just because I like my job. But I think that that's also a part of what I'm supposed to be doing. But if I'm not Stephen, whose job is it? Who will be Stephen? Who will bring that trouble back to the church? Because we need that trouble. We need Stephen's vision, we need Stephen's courage, and we need to be moved to action that identifies us with those in need, with those who are overlooked or forgotten or left behind in our society. And we all need to remember that that group of folks appears to be getting larger these days. At our last diocesan convention, we voted to approve a resolution. And that resolution asked us, when we gather, whenever we gather, as the people of Stephen, as the people of Christ in our churches, to consider how our actions in that gathering will impact people living in poverty. And it may be that on the surface of things, that's not a very relevant question. It might not be easy to ask that question. But I think we tried it out at the vestry one time, and we found actually there was pretty rich conversation emerged out of asking the question. how we use our property, how we steward our resources, how we structure our programs, how we teach, and how we welcome. Those things are all touched when we look from that perspective. That was Stephen's special gift. He saw from the perspective of the people who were being overlooked within the Christian community. This is the early Christian church, you know. It's supposed to glow and be perfect and holy, right? Except there was an entire group of people who were being treated unjustly. And Stephen could touch that. Stephen could see that. And Stephen could hold the church accountable and help them adjust the system in this rapidly growing. Part of the reason the church was growing so fabulously was because of the concern for the dignity of every human being, because of the compassion for the poor, but because the church was kind of getting unwieldy in its growth. It becomes easy to ignore people who are different. Stephen was tuned into that. And Stephen was able to help address that. If Stephen is to us more than a beloved puppet who shows up once a year to make us smile and then goes back quietly to his place downstairs, if he's more to us than that, if he could speak, if he does speak, I'm sure that is the sort of question he is asking. He is asking how our lives impact those who live in poverty. I think the habit of asking the question, and not only asking the question, but the habit of willingly entertaining a variety of answers to it, answers that arise both from within the congregation and without, and wrestling with them honestly with each other. Perhaps we can set aside some of the arrogance and bombastic attitude of the obnoxious convert. Perhaps we can actually listen to each other. That might make it easier. Perhaps the gift of listening to one another is the other place where St. Stephen will reside. To the openness that allows us to see and hear the experience of others, that takes it in without reacting, without rejecting, but responds with compassionate and careful listening. Maybe Stephen will be for us in the questions, in the answers, and in the listening. I invite us all in the coming year to live with that question and to see where Stephen leads us. Amen.